like triggered and something. Do or don't Stormcast Eternals. I thought like we just had to do this one. Why? Because check this out. Check this out. Hold on. How do we do that? Hold on. Honestly, like wasn't prepared for this. Yes, there we go. No, not that one. Mm, where is it? There we go. Uh, yeah, there we go. And wait. Before we do, hold on. Yeah. Oh, I remember now. It's like the reason why the whole thing isn't prepped is because last time I used like a slideshow. The slideshow function was like still in the old PC. But anyways, check this out, right? The reason like I wanted to do this video is because of this mini, right? During the last expo, was it the expo or no? Yeah, during the last convention, of course we all know what the Space Marine is. We were still like quite early in our 40K stuff, and we have yet to get into Warhammer Fantasy. And I almost always used to see this guy under it, and I saw a lot of people during the Pilipintados. Pilipintados was there. Pilipintados is an organization of commissioned painter, or they paint minis here in our little island in the Philippines. Anyways, I remember you can either paint a Space Marine or you can paint this guy on there, right? Like it took me like I've had this guy since that convention. Next one is coming like by May or something, and we're gonna be there. Our worlds is coming, or at least our qualifiers will be held there. For the Asian Masters, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, still up in the air. But anyways, I've had this during that time. I've had this guy under it, the Stormcaster under it, and I honestly had no clue what he is or was until I brought him into the local LGS. What is this guy? Who is this? Oh, they're the equivalent of the Space Marines and the AOS, if I'm not mistaken. Was it AOS? Were Stormcast Eternals already there in the end times, or were they an AOS thing? Anyways, so yeah, we just had to check this one out. Do or don't Stormcast Eternals, because I've had this mini in like forever. He was like a sort of a mystery for me for like 6 months before I actually found out what he or she was. But anyways, again, you guys, let's check this video out by one of our best in terms of Warhammer Fantasy. PancreasNoWork. Do or don't Stormcast Eternals. Like it if you do, and subscribe for Sigmar knows we need it. All right. Okay, let's go. Yeah.
And they're high-tech or blessed by the gods. The real pieces of work of the universe, that's who. In Warhammer Fantasy, it was Chaos who had the Warriors of Chaos. Look at them. Crazy broke armor, blessed by the gods, while their main enemies have pike and shot. That's hardly fair. Or the Empire in Star Wars. You got the rebels in business casual attire with a funky helmet. Meanwhile, the Empire has stormtroopers, which, while the armor is presumably made out of used chewing gum, still fit the bill. And it's more of the same in 40k, because everyone is evil in that godforsaken universe. I'm sorry, Space Marine fans, but your favorite chapter is almost certainly not a force for good, just lesser shades of dickhead. Vulcan torched an Eldar child, remember?
I like the... What? Vulcan torched an Eldar child? Honestly, didn't know. Well, you learn something new every day. Right? I guess one more reason for me to invest. Not to... Here's the thing, right? I have been investing in other systems. And right now we're discussing, friends and I are discussing, should we like, get into Moonstone? You guys should check it out, by the way. Just, Google it. New tabletop, skirmish game, Moonstone, that's, based on fairy tales or something. I have yet to check it out, and anyways, The thing is, I have like this feeling that I am simply delaying the inevitable of actually investing into Warhammer. Because I was supposed to invest into Kill Team. Like like a couple of months back, but I did everything in my power. No, no, don't do it, because you know what? The whole thing will go into the legend system in less than in less than 2 years or something. But anyways, and I remember there was this one guy, one of the leaders of the bolt action community, actually pointed out to me, I honestly can't, give you any advice regarding the whole thing. Because here's the thing, right? There are two types of 40k players. Those who started with 40k and moved out of 40k and into other systems, and those who came from other systems and moved into 40k. So basically, they came from the different place, but moved into the somewhat same place and same direction. But those are different journeys. Moving into 40k versus moving out of 40k are two very distinct experiences. So yeah, I mean, because he moved out of 40k, he's now one of the city leaders of the bolt action community here in the Philippines, and that's the whole thing. And I and unfortunately, and I'm leading my own community of another system. So yeah, it's sort of like we're gonna meet or we're gonna diverge on that particular path. And he said, "Nope, can't advise you because we are on a different journey." And yeah, and he told me, yeah, the destination it will inevitably lead into that shitty destination known as the world of 40k. Because like right now, I am doing everything in my power. Like I'm winning for Gundam Assemble. Then there's StarCraft. Not to mention, I have received invites from the Conquest people, and then there was this one Halo people. Halo has a skirmish game. Did you guys know that? I mean, they invited me to, but anyways, let's keep on moving.
If the good guys do have this kind
There
of
we go,
thing,
Halo,
they'll be in
see?
far fewer supply than the bad guys. The
They have a
Spartans had
skirmish
power
game,
armor and no
Halo
one else.
something.
Half the Covenant had some rough equivalent.
Although Halo's part of my generation, like Halo was the stuff during the early 2Ks. For some reason, we weren't into it. Because the guys I hung out with weren't into the whole thing.
Well, you know what? If there's one thing I can truthfully thank Age of Sigmar for, it's fixing
Foreground.
this issue. Finally, the good guys have their own armored, basically immortal killing machines that throw into the fray. So do you like massive, bulky heroes of legend throwing down against massive, bulky villains of legend, all the while a power metal album cover for the fate of
Because why not, right? I forgot, they had a very smart name for Stormcast Eternals. I just can't remember it.
reality is happening in the background? Then why don't we see if the Stormcast Eternals are the faction for you?
Yeah.
The Stormcast Eternals are what happens when Sigmar finally had enough of Chaos hogging all the fantasy power armor and said he was
Yeah.
done fucking around. See, Neoldi fantasy lore is
Alright,
just
so basically Stormcast Eternals are in the AOS in the AOS era. Is that what you call it? Epoch era? Because going back, you have old world, fantasy proper, end times, and then AOS. So I'm assuming before they still didn't have any Stormcast Eternals in the other eras or in the other epochs or in the other timelines, but they just had to show up with Sigmar in the Age of Sigmar when he finally comes back to help out mankind.
regular dudes against literal demons of hell and worse, and they always eventually came out on top, except for that one time they didn't and the world blew up. But Sigmar knows that everyone makes mistakes and figured he'd give the regular folks of the world another try. And for the longest time in Age of Sigmar's backstory, it worked. With every god working together, Chaos couldn't do jack. And even when it started invading, the average Joes and Jills of the world fought it tooth and nail. But then all the other gods like Tyrion and Gork and or Mork started pissing off doing their own thing. And Sigmar eventually lost that war along with everyone else. He realized that despite his godly powers and abilities, he couldn't handle chaos on his own with just an army of regular people. So he closed shut the doors for an entire eighth of reality, sat in his room for a few hundred and or thousand of years, and when he came out, he had his own super soldiers to fight with. They were the Stormcast Eternals, his finest warriors who shall know no fear. Wait, no, that's someone else. Each Stormcast is formed from a hero who's about to die in a glorious stand against chaos. The neat thing is it isn't necessarily just great warriors. The only real qualification is if you...
So, I like it, by the way. We're looking at the Valkyrie concept here that, they're hand-picked. They're not bred or modified, but hand-picked. Okay.
went above and beyond the call of duty while resisting chaos. A noble woman who allowed hundreds of refugees into her realm before sacrificing herself in a distraction while they escaped could become Stormcast Eternal. A baker supplying soldiers until the last wall fell could become one as well. Hell, it's possible other species than humans could become Stormcast, though I don't believe that one's been officially shown yet. With these heroes turned superheroes, Sigmar pushed back chaos on all fronts, and as they reconquered the mortal realms, the normal citizens made sure to secure what the Stormcast had won. Finally, the good guys had their own ace in the hole, other than the plot armor that comes with being the plucky underdogs against forces beyond our comprehension. So, with the background said and done, what makes them an attractive army from a lore standpoint? Well, like I said in the intro, if you want the forces of good to be souped-up heroes blessed by an angry god, look no further. That sort of vibe is generally reserved for the assholes, so now you can play the morally correct side of the fight dressed in a smart car's worth of metal. In a universe where historically the good guys were always in some way outmatched, it's nice to see the Stormcast even things up a bit. More than just the power armor, though, the Stormcast are the first good guy
I mean, if I honestly didn't know any better, I would think that I'm looking at Custodes right now.
faction in Warhammer that doesn't need to fear death and slowly bleeding away via attrition, which is pretty sick. See, when they die, Sigmar just goes nah and stuffs their soul back in a new body before telling them to get back out there, champ. So you never need to feel like you're part of the losing team. Ever notice how in every Warhammer setting, chaos or...
So we have like, apart from the Valkyrie concept, you have like the immortal concept. Because the Immortals concept, of course, if you guys are a fan of that Gerard Butler film 300, right? The Immortals, the Persian Immortals were described to be this, literally immortal fighting force that no one dies. But in reality, they have reserves. Meaning, I think it was that, no, was it the Sacred Band of Thebes? I could be mixing up their numbers with like the Sacred Band of Thebes, where there's like 10,000 of them. And the thing is, what happens is every time someone gets killed in combat, same guy wearing the same uniform would basically replace the one that got killed, and creating this illusion that their numbers aren't diminished by losses, that they simply come back from the dead. Because there's an immediate replacement, like literally right behind them or something.
For the fantasy ones, the undead just don't need to give a shit about dying? Well, that's no longer unique to them. The good guys finally have their own respawn method. There's no need to worry about never seeing your friends again. Tommy got beheaded last week, and now he's in the cafeteria waiting to show you the cool cup he made out of his own skull. I mean, sure, the process is flawed, and the Stormcast lose a bit of their soul each time, and by the second that they start to lose their memories and personalities too, but I mean, what are you gonna do? You already get a free revive, plus the first one doesn't hurt you enough to really matter. In fact, since Sigmar pulls you from the moment you'd otherwise get murdered to become a Stormcast, you technically get 2 consequence-free revives. Plus old Siggy's trying to fix it, it's just hard, He's a war god, he likes to smash shit and be done with the issue. Even if the process has issues, he's still doing way more than the Emperor did for any of his followers. And as far as being a factional wargame goes, the downsides like that are nearly irrelevant. When your guys get their shit pushed...
Guys, regardless, they definitely look cool though. I mean, they look cool, honestly. At this point, I'd say, even better than the Custodes, although we could simply be looking at the artist's rendition or something.
In because you don't know what you're doing in the slightest, narratively they just come right back and it's like you never lost the battle. Just, now they're a little bit more schizophrenic than the first time around. They also show up to fights in the most
Wait,
metal
what's
way.
the level of schizophrenic here? Because I remember you had like the Thunder Warriors, and there was this you had the Thunder Warriors, which was like the prototype for the Space Marines, but the Emperor wiped them out for the simple reason that they were too homicidal. And then I remember I was having this discussion with another dude in one of our videos, and he said because I was pointing out that maybe this whole thing was the Emperor's fault regarding Angron, that he was an asshole about it. that instead of saving the other guys, like like Gilliman, their families or their friends were saved. Whereas how come Angron's friends were left to die? He said, you know what? Well, it was a thing though. I mean, what, you're gonna save a bunch of homicidal barbarians compared to, the rest of the planet, which was a better resource for the Empire. So yeah, I mean, when these guys get resurrected, like, what's the trade-off? Like he just said, I mean, Pancreas just said a little bit more schizophrenic. Like, how many voices do they hear? Huh? Squirrel. No, it's ADHD.
Possible. An entire army suddenly appears from a massive lightning storm. Warhammer Fantasy has always been about a somewhat grounded fantasy universe. The Empire of Man's biggest problems, aside from the occasional continent-wide Viking invasion, were mostly mundane ones any early modern civilization had. All of the quarrels between elf and dwarf were grounded in historical grievances, very much like real-life cultures. That being said, the Stormcast are a walking power metal album, and it's amazing. Absolutely nothing about them is grounded in reality, and it's goddamn awesome. An angry god throws lightning bolts onto the battlefield that causes an army of superhumans to show up and wreck your shit. Peak army material right there. So if you want your fantasy army to feel fantastical, then here you go. The Stormcast also brings a visual identity to Age of Sigmar that Warhammer Fantasy kinda lacked. Now I'll be honest, I prefer the setting of fantasy to that of AOS, but from a visual perspective, as opposed to a scent perspective, what the hell, come on. It didn't really have something that someone from an outside perspective could see and instantly go, yeah, that's Warhammer. Like, the Empire of Man is awesome, but if you weren't into Warhammer, then looking at an Imperial soldier, you wouldn't go, oh cool, that's that Warhammer thing I heard about. You might go, hey neat, some cool little Renaissance army dude. Even the more fantastical elements didn't really bring too much unique to the table.
I've always seen it like old world was medieval ages, and then Warhammer Fantasy to Warhammer Fantasy to End Times was the Renaissance or something, but instead of the Renaissance evolving into the 19th or 18th century, pike and shot era, it just literally stayed there. Because the world ended there. The world ended, didn't progress any further or wasn't given any chance at all to progress any further thanks to chaos.
Visually speaking, that is. Sure, I love the high elves, but elves are in every goddamn fantasy setting.
Yes, they
Visually,
are.
they just look like elves. Awesome, but nothing unique to Warhammer. I mean, I guess they have the dildo helmets, but I don't know if I want to give them credit for that. But the Stormcast? Yeah, you look at them and go, this is Warhammer. You know what else Sigmar's Golden Boys have going for them? Basically unlimited homebrew capability. Want to make your own paint scheme and lore for a host of Stormcast? It's easy as hell. These guys are the Stoneforged Avengers. They come from Kamon and especially despise orcs. Also, they're all dwarfs. I made that up in 30 seconds, and ta-da, I now have the idea for an entire batch of Stormcast. Literally anything you think of can be a Stormcast, as long as it fulfills the two requirements of love Sigmar and hate chaos. There's no restrictions on gender or even species to be a Stormcast. Even the Space Marines aren't that
See, no gender restriction. I mean, we all covered that hullabaloo before, but here we are.
flexible for building an original army. Relatedly, the models are also incredibly easy to paint. Large and relatively undetailed areas to paint make for a newcomer's best friend. Or any painter's best friend. You've spent 50 hours painting Eldar and have 6 models to show for it. I'm not bitter and projecting, you are. That's not to say they don't have the more detailed models. I mean, this guy sure has a lot going on. But the Stormcast models are certainly made to be given quick and easy color schemes. Plus, the main coloration for a lot of these guys, including the most commonly shown host, is a metallic color. Metallic paints, in my experience, are some of the easiest ones to use. So not only are the painted areas large and easily distinguishable.
I've always had trouble with metallic paints, but then again, I don't use like GW or Army Painter. I like literally use there is available here in the island, which is either Hero or Arkham paints.
From one another, you'll probably be using a paint that itself doesn't require insane painting skills to use. Speaking of their models, these things are gorgeous. Now, admittedly, I personally just like that thing when a character has a face mask like this. I just find it really cool. But even beyond that, some of these models are just awesome. I mean, look at Carl Frant, the Celestin Prime. Now, there's a guy who's gonna bust some goddamn heads. Those thin metallic wings look pretty awesome too, and fit in with the armor itself, so you don't just have someone in futuristic armor with angel wings awkwardly bolted on. Sanguinius. These guys are riding baby hippogriffs made out of lightning magic.
Again, I always found Sanguinius to be overrated.
Stormcast models bring a level of flair that previously Warhammer Fantasy never really had. Know whether or not you think that's a good thing admittedly comes down to personal preference, but for me, I'm putting it down in the positives. They're lightning-wielding demigods the size of a Prius and they look the part. I love that shit. That being said, you can give your models regular heads if you aren't a fan of the face mask look. Hell, with the flexibility they have, give them dwarf heads or orc heads too, why not? The point is, if you dislike how the models currently look, it's easy to change them up a little bit. If nothing
No
else, I advise you to
restrictions.
look up some images of some homebrew Stormcast paint jobs if you really dislike the high fantasy.
I like that marble armor. I mean, of course, I'm not really sure if we know marble or stone armor exists, but look at that color scheme, though. Nice.
Look they have going for them. With some more muted metallic colors instead of the standard aggressively golden look, the Stormcast
Yeah.
really take on a whole new life. At the very least, the models themselves are objectively good quality. I haven't looked at all of them, but I've looked at a few dozen of the available ones and I haven't seen any resin models yet. None of the models look derpy because of aging or poor sculpting either. They're an incredibly new army in the grand scale of Warhammer, so this does make sense. To compare, look at the Beastmen or Skaven, who've been around for a lot longer, so you can tell they're suffering in that department. How about their rules? What's the upside of the Stormcast? Well, first off, they have one of the highest number of available models for an army in either Warhammer setting. This means you have a massive amount of options to choose from, giving the Stormcast a pretty damn impressive level of flexibility on the battlefield. They've got some range, they've got some magic, they've got a lot of big burly bastards ready to smack someone's head down through their ribcage. They'll have at
Why
least
not,
something in
right?
just about every department. Plus, they can ally with other Order factions if there's a specific weakness you think another army can patch up nicely. From half-naked elves to angry dinosaurs to a tank, you can bring in your allies to show that Sigmar doesn't discriminate. He takes help from all those who are willing to give it. As for the Stormcast themselves, they've got some pretty solid stats. They are highly
Gorgeous.
durable soldiers. They have ways to heal lost wounds, but that's assuming you lose any wounds, because Stormcast models all have 2 wounds or more and a 4-up save. If you have no idea what that means, don't worry, I barely do either. In normal people,
So 2 wounds and 4 up saves. Quite tough.
words, the Stormcast are hard to hurt, and if you do hurt them, they can heal up pretty easily. Stormcast models also hit pretty hard. Now, of course, some armies hit a bit harder. The followers of the Blood God are probably going to be pretty damn good at gathering blood, but it's safe to say that when the Stormcast reach the melee, they're going to be dishing out some damage themselves. In fact, they're pretty decent all-rounders. They've got some shooting, they've got some wizards, they got some dope-as-hell cavalry. From what I've seen, all of these units perform, if not great, then at least adequately. Are some models going to underperform relative to their cost? Yeah, of course. But again, from what I've seen, there's no models that are more or less objectively bad choices to take, just some that could be tweaked a bit. I know the rules part of this video is going to be a bit short, but honestly, there's only so much I can say before I start getting into a level of detail I don't really want to take the do or don't series to. The Stormcast hit hard, can take a beating, and have plenty of options available between the army itself and other Order factions. Now, usually I'd get into the lore downsides of these guys in this point of the video, but
For anyone here that plays like AOS, can someone put it down? I mean, are they meta right now? Because as far as I know, at least in the current edition of 40k, Custodes is the meta. I'm not gonna, although I'm not sure in the next one, with all that hullabaloo about female Custodes. But anyways, are the Stormcasts are they the meta right now for AOS? Comments, please.
there's something so divisive, so hit or miss that I can't bring myself to put it in either positive or negative, so I'm just going to awkwardly put it in the middle. The Stormcast Eternals are Warhammer Fantasy Space Marines. They're big,
they
tough
are.
models that hit hard, they have a massive amount of options to choose from, and clearly get a bit more love from Games Workshop than some other factions. They're easy to paint and build to appeal to new players. When GW unveiled these guys, it's pretty clear what inspired them. Now, this can be good and bad. For the good, it gives the fantasy settings of Warhammer something a bit more fantastical. Something that really makes the setting
Honestly, can't wait to see the Starcraft minis from the Caprulu sector thing that finally comes out.
feel like it's a unique and crazy world where even the good guys are surrounded by magic to help them in battle. It gives Age of Sigmar an easy armor for people who want to get into the hobby, which in turn brings more people into the hobby since they don't need to assemble and paint an army with 1,000 different fiddly bits. I mean, the first models I ever painted were some clipped together Stormcast ones. It gives the good guys of fantasy an ultimate weapon to turn to. Plus, Space Marines are cool, so it's not the worst crime to try and recreate them in a different setting. But it also brings negatives. Warhammer Fantasy was always a more down-to-earth setting where the forces of evil were pushed back by everyday men and women using what they had. From the Empire using pike and shot formation.
I mean, that is the story of that's the story of the guards, but then again, if that was enough, if the guards were enough, they'd have the story wouldn't have a need to call on Space Marines. or the custodies for that matter.
Nation to the High Elves consisting largely of trained militia forces. True, the villains were demons from hell and rats with energy weapons, but the heroes usually were more realistic even if they were members of fantasy
I like
races.
that.
So when the Stormcast come in,
Everyday men and women just trying to hold the tides of chaos. Because here, before the old PC decided to die on us, we were supposed to start in the series. I mean, it's probably, you know what? Why don't we go at it next week? Our painting series using Tales from the Void, while we paint. But the thing is, with regards to those stories, because they have a ton of Space Marine stories. The thing is, I wanted to focus on the stories of regular people in the realms of 40k, or in the 40k universe. Because here's the thing, right? You are a demigod dressed in power armor, with the resource of the empire behind you, right? I am not worried about your problems. Or, you know what? I honestly couldn't care less about your problems, because cry me a river with everything that you have, blessed by the emperor and everything. And you dare tell the street urchin trying to survive an exterminatus about your problems? No. I'm honestly not interested in the problems of these demigods on screen right now. I am honestly more worried, or I'm honestly more invested in the stories of ordinary people and living in these universes. So yeah, you know what? I'm gonna think hard about it, and maybe we can get back to that particular series where we paint and listen to 40k stories about regular people next week. Yeah, just you know what? Why don't we? I mean, that's the whole point why we're listening to this one right now. Mm.
and like, we are the chosen of a god emperor who has built an army of super soldiers to reclaim lost lands. It can feel like GW
Yeah.
wanted to make some easy money and not a natural progression of the established setting. It can also be seen as
Cry
GW
me a
kind of
river.
watering down their settings a bit. Need something to revive the fantasy setting? Space Marines, of course. Need a new release? Fuck it, one of the Space Marines. I don't care if it's the sci-fi or fantasy ones. They can be seen as GW making yet another bland and generic army to play it safe and marketable with, rather than trying to come up with something unique and truly interesting. Plus, with the whole soul-stealing thing that happens when they die, it can be argued that what little originality they have is being taken away to make them more like Space Marines. With the Stormcast becoming more emotionless and detached from humanity the more often they die. Now, I personally love the Stormcast, but I understand why people might look at them and go, this is stupid, they're just fantasy Space Marines. Here's how I look
probably
at it,
is.
and by that, of course, I mean how Josh Reynolds put it, and I'm shamelessly plagiarizing. The Space Marines are Batman, and the Stormcast are Captain America. They both beat the snot out of bad guys, they're both superheroes, but you wouldn't call Captain America and Batman the same thing, now would you? Anyways,
I mean, one is suffering from PTSD. They're both suffering from PTSD, but one on the left is childhood trauma, and on the right, war. I don't know who has it worse, but come on. Alright, I mean, like I said, the one on the left. Here's the thing, right? I wouldn't discount that. I wouldn't discount that, the one on the left, Batman. Again, poor little rich boy. Parents were killed in front of him, and now you have the entire resource of the world behind you. On the right, you have a soldier, you have a volunteer who went into it. Yes, he was injected with he turned into a demigod when he was injected with the serum, when he was experimented on. To be honest, yeah. I'd Batman versus Captain America. Batman's problems could have been solved by therapy. Alright? Instead of focusing on on his wealth, uh on trying to look cool, or trying to being the knight, or trying to be vengeance, he could have invested it in therapy. He could have invested in Gotham's infrastructure, social development, and social services. It would have solved 90%, or 90 to 95% of the city's problems. Alright, he could have his problems could have been fixed with therapy. Alfred dropped the ball on that one. I blame Alfred from that one. You know what? Instead of letting the boy getting the boy some help with the best psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists the world has to offer. No, let's egg on the boy. Let's encourage the boy to run around and beat up homeless people. Who's probably also suffering from schizophrenia and other mental disorders. Whereas Captain America, poor boy, living on the mean streets of New York, there was a war ongoing, and you know what? He only wanted to help. Alright? He only wanted to help. He could do this all day. So yeah, definitely in terms of me caring about whose problems I'm supposed to care about, I'd rather go with Captain America. As for Batman, cry me a river, get some help, get some therapy, all right? Because he'd always have money. Whereas Captain America, we don't even know, like, depending on what you're reading right now, we don't even know if he has the support of S.H.I.E.L.D. For all we know, at this particular point, he could be a fugitive on the run with no choice, no money whatsoever. Whereas Batman, he'd always have Alfred, he'd always have the manor, he'd always have the money to come back home to. Get some help. Like, reminds me, like, I miss my therapist. I haven't, like, seen her. I honestly miss my therapist since, before the pandemic.
Weird divisive topic over, time for negatives. Lore-wise, the Stormcast are getting the shit kicked out of them lately.
Yep.
Entire storm hosts are being severely damaged, if not outright destroyed. Sigmar are still desperately trying to fix the issue with recreating them when they die. The Lumineth are stealing their thunder. Becoming the faction that swoops in out of nowhere to save the day. Not a great time to be a Sigmarine. Of course, that issue can come and go with the lore releases. What can't come and go is the fact that the Stormcast, while they don't permanently die, certainly suffer from it. I've mentioned it already, but to go into full detail on it, when a Stormcast dies, their soul travels back to Sigmar so we can remake them a new body and send them back out. Problem is, every time one dies, the god of death Nagash sticks his bony fingers in the Stormcast soul and steals a bit because he's an asshole like that. Just reaches on in and yanks some
so they don't come back whole. Alright, that's the whole thing.
Soul juice away. So Sigmar can't properly recreate them as they were, and the more times they die, the more emotionless and detached they become, along with them losing their memory as well. So yeah, sure they'll always come back, but eventually the Stormcast might become an army of fleshy Necrons. Just something to keep in mind if you wanted an army of pure good super soldiers, because that pure good thing is slowly going away. Lore-wise, they're also always in the biggest of battles. While at first this might seem like an upside, it takes away a little bit of relatability. Like, I can't imagine myself swinging a hammer the size of a man in a lava field the size of Manhattan fighting millions of slaves of dark gods. But
it's like, I remember there was this show, I mean, it's when when he was talking about relatability. I remember there was this show, Kiefer Sutherland during the early 2Ks, called 24. Because the entire series, if I'm not mistaken, I was never into it, but the whole thing was, how the whole thing was, is that 24. Why? Because everything happens within 24 hours. So, if you guys see the meme, tig dug 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 dug, there's a clock comes in that's counting down. So basically, it's like, I can't remember, but each season is like composed of 24 episodes because there's only like 24 hour. Everything happens in 24 hours. And the thing is, so each episode is like an hour or something like that. Anyways, it was a scrunch, and they said they got through it with cocaine. It actually takes away the relatability of the entire thing. Like, for example, on the first hour or on that episode, Kiefer Sutherland gets beat up. Jack Bauer. His character's name is Jack Bauer. Like, he'd get beat up so much that he'd break bones or whatever. It's like, really? You're still going to fight? You're still going to fight after that? You're still gonna chase? Why don't you just, call the cops or something, or call the CIA or whatever, and to handle the entire thing? Like, I just simply couldn't relate that, the whole thing, because a lot of things. Here's the thing, right? Time is relative. As Einstein said, an hour, to a person, an hour to a person on the bus could be, could be a lifetime for a person fighting for his life or something. But the thing, a minute, like for a minute, right? Time is relative, meaning we perceive time differently depending on our current circumstances or the depending on the present situation. That's why, the expression, this is going to be a long day, when spending time with people you don't like, or when doing an activity you don't like time seems to stretch. But anyways, one just imagine if you've ever been in a fight, like the whole thing. Like I remember when I got into that particular fight, after my first suspension, when I lost that particular fight, I was taken to the hospital. They had to get x-rayed, they didn't find anything. But the point is, the whole thing felt like so long, and you know what? I remember that day, that first time I lost a fight and I was taken to the hospital. And the thing is, I remembered if I was Jack Bauer, like, after this fight, I just like, felt so tired. I felt hurt. I was bruised all over. Like, and you know what? Jack Bauer would like, get into several fights in like one day. And like, I don't think like I could live that kind of life or something. But anyways,
But I
uh,
sure as shit can imagine myself sitting next to a cannon absolutely terrified while a few dozen beastmen come charging at my fort. Not the biggest downside, but just something to keep in mind if, like me, you enjoy a more scaled down narrative from time to time. The Stormcast really don't get those. As for their models, like I said, I think they look good and are as a whole very
that they
creative.
do.
But from unit to unit, you aren't getting much variety. Big dude in gold armor. Big dude in gold armor. Big girl in
I would do like looks hot. She looks hot. Uh if this was up to me, I would chrome them or like do black steel. Because I just brought some black steel paint to recreate those cuirass, pike and shot era cuirass. I'm gonna try to remake them in my army because I just got a bunch of West Tower, the Shadow Tower spearmen, and they wear cuirasses, and I thought might as well recreate those pike and shot era or Cromwell era cuirasses, pikeman cuirasses. But if this was up to me, I would either do silver, black steel, or chrome. They would look hot.
slightly fancier golden armor. Big dude in gold armor on a circumcised dragon. Yeah, you can
Circumcised
really
dragon.
see that they're just fantasy space marines here. As for rules negatives, here
Wow.
are a few. First off, you get your rules first out of everyone. Now, this might sound like a purely positive thing, but keep in mind that usually
Yeah,
means that when a new
gorgeous. Definitely look gorgeous.
edition first launches, the Stormcast have had the least amount of time to get to grips with it. Whereas other factions might have well over a year of GW observing games to see how certain mechanics work and fit together, the Stormcast have whatever testing Games Workshop did during development, and that's it. Their rules
Wow.
age more than any other faction, for better or worse. On top of that, because the rules come first,
better
everyone knows
or
how they
worse.
work first. By the time most other armies get their own battle tome, they know what the Stormcast are gonna do. This leads to other factions having something in their list specifically to counter Stormcast because everyone's had time to figure out how to do it. It's the same as the Space Marines in 40k. Because they're so common and updated first, everyone has something to specifically handle them. Unlike the Space Marines, though, you aren't quite as favored by GW. The Stormcasts are certainly the favorite, don't get me wrong, but not like the Space Marines getting one model every time any other faction does, so half of all releases are Space Marine. Other factions are allowed to have fun in Age of Sigmar, which is
Yeah.
definitely a positive for the setting as a whole, but if you choose Stormcast, don't expect Games Workshop to be on their knees worshipping your faction. It's more like $10 extra in your allowance because you're the favorite child, but your parents
You guys like want to play Space Marine in the future? Because I feel like we sort of like missed so much because of our old engine, and now that like we have a new engine, we could like do so much more now in terms of gaming.
don't want to make it obvious. Also, you will get sick of the names for them very quickly. You know the Space Wolves, the wolfiest wolves to ever wolf, the
Yeah.
enemies of the Wolf Emperor Wolf of Wolf Wolf? That's the Stormcast.
I
Just
mean
replace
Luna Wolves before they become a Sons of Horus, blah blah.
the word wolf with storm or some equivalent. The Stormcast Eternals are organized into Storm Host and can also garrison Storm Keeps. The words storm and
Or-
associated words like thunder are going to show up everywhere. If
Storm
not, then
water.
you get these things.
Storm cigarettes, storm bread.
Desolator, Justicator, Fulminator, Evocator, Prestidigitator. Do I know what any of these words mean? No.
No.
Does Games Workshop? Probably
one
not.
knows.
It sure is stupid though. And it doesn't even
It
tell you what those
sounds
models
stupid.
do. What the fuck is a fulminator gonna do? What does it mean to be fulminated?
We don't know, but just like that early 2K band, Evanescence, it just sounds cool. Oh, when someone's idea that, with like the nerdiest idea of sounding cool. Uh,
Why do I have to pull out a dictionary every time I look at your web store, Games Workshop?
hold up, hold
Why
up,
don't you
hold up, hold
fulminate
up, hold up. For the sake of like brevity or something, let's Google what does fulminator mean, or if it means anything at all. Uh, a fulminator is one who severely criticizes, denounces, or hurls lightning. From the Latin fulminatus, who fulminates, intense. The term refers to someone who fulminates, often used to describe intense verbal attacks. It also refers to fictional items or characters in Destiny 2 or Diablo 3. But hold on, let's look at Merriam-Webster. Latin hurler of lightning, from fulminatus, past participle of fulminare, to lightning strike with lightning. Now we know. We learned something new.
some bitch? Now for rules. What shits the bed for the Stormcast? Well, your soldiers being super comes at a literal price. For every model you can field, just assume the enemy has two. Unless you're playing against ogres or the gargants, you're probably gonna be outnumbered.
On a 4+ save, on 2 wounds, I mean, even if it's a 2-on-1, you're literally worth 2, I guess.
Depending on how you set up your army, there are rules that allow a single Stormcast model to count as 2 or 3 for the purpose of holding objectives.
Counts as 2 or 3 in terms of holding an objective, yeah.
But even that might not help. It doesn't matter if your unit of 5 prestidigitators counts as 15. I'm throwing 40 clanarts on that objective and I'm not letting go. Another issue is that also unlike the Space Marines, you aren't the jack of all trades, also the master of everything, because fuck you, this is Space Marine 40k. You're good at everything, don't get me wrong, but you don't really excel at anything compared to a faction who specializes in it. Corn is gonna butcher you in a
because why not? Jack of all trades. Rather have them.
Stand-up fight. If you try and get in a shooting match with the Kharadron Overlords, you're going to end up looking like the first guy to get off the boat on Normandy. You have to use your all-rounder status to make the most out of the Stormcast.
Just jump in, walk in, and punch someone in the face or something.
Yes, because while you can brute force your way to victory to some extent, you aren't good enough at it to do it all the time. Also, given that...
Alright, so that's a weakness. You can't do it all the time. If just, walk up, just get in there and punch someone in the face.
They're closer to the elite end of the spectrum. Every model you lose is going to hurt. It's not as bad as the Gargants, the army that might have 2 models in it. But compare the Stormcast to a unit of skeletons. Oh, half the unit got wiped? What am I ever going to do without these units that exist to die so something else gets to live? Yeah, you don't get that luxury. Every loss noticeably hurts. If your units don't get stuck in and they die, you've wasted your points. So, there's my basic guide of the Stormcast. Elite units who aren't great at everything, but still good enough to fight in Sigmar's name, even if the odds against them stack higher and higher. I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching and take care.
Again, you guys, like it if you do. Sigmar knows we need it, so subscribe. Bye!